Good evening, guys. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at one of the newest designs from Invicta. This watch is going to be the Grand Diver 2, which is the second generation of their Grand Diver range of watches. Now, taking a look at the packaging is the standard Invicta packaging. It's an outer yellow cardboard box. Inside is a leatherette clamshell box with silver painted Invicta on the front. Opening that up, inside the lid you'll find a small envelope containing the warranty card and manual, and a suede cleaning cloth which is sitting on top of the watch. The watch itself is sitting on top of a suede pillow in the center of the box. Taking the watch out, this watch is black PVD over 316L stainless steel. They make a variety of other colors in this watch as well as non-plated versions and gold-plated versions. This is a 47 millimeter diving watch, 18 millimeters in thickness. Taking a look at the watch, it has solid end links, 316L solid stainless steel bracelet. The pattern or the finishing on the watch is polished on the outer surfaces, on the sides, polished down the center of the bracelet, and then brushed elsewhere. There is a diver helmet logo screw down crown at the 3 o'clock position, as well as the diver's helmet logo which carries through onto the solid end links as well as onto the dial. You can see. Now, the one standout feature of this watch is going to be this extra thick bezel. The bezel from the front has a painted insert which has the standard diver's markings on it for timing. But then when you look at the bezel edgewise, it also has the same corresponding markings on the outer edge of the bezel. Now, other than being a purely aesthetic, almost decorative design, I'm not entirely sure what the utility of having the markings on the outer perimeter of the bezel would be, mainly because the purpose of the diver's markings on the bezel are for timing, and for timing you really need to be able to reference the minute hand on the dial. And so looking at the watch edgewise, you're not really going to be able to see the minute hand on the dial to be able to tell what you're timing. Now, taking a closer look at the dial, you'll see that the dial is finished in a dark charcoal gray coloration with a subtle sunray pattern. The dial almost has a two-layer appearance with a recessed inner portion and a raised outer ring. The inner portion has the Invicta logo as well as the automatic designation and the water resistance designation of 300 meters, and the diver helmet logo again as appeared on the case, which is part of their Grand Diver series. There's a small silver outline date window at the 4:30 position with a black numeral on a white background. Looking at the outer ring, you'll start to see that there are grooves cut out underneath each of the hour markers. There's stick markers at the 12, 3, 6, and 9, followed by circular markers at the other positions. It's when you start tilting the watch that you start to see some other design features that you might not have noticed initially. First off, these markers stand quite a ways from the dial. They're actually quite tall, and I think that's in part due to the thickness of the bezel allowing the crystal to sit further away from the dial. But when you look at the 3, 6, and 9, you'll notice that the stick markers aren't actually stick markers at all. They're actually Arabic numerals for 3, 6, and 9. So that's a pretty clever design feature, which I didn't notice honestly initially when I first looked at the watch. It was only when I started getting up close to the dial and taking a look that I started to see these things. The one thing I will note are that the main hour and minute hands are actually quite short given the overall size of the dial. But I think that's in part because the hands needed to clear or be shorter than the markers because of how tall the markers are. The luminous compound that Invicta uses on this watch is their proprietary tritonite material. It's used on the surface of each of the markers as well as the hour and minute hands, the small dot on the seconds hand, as well as the pearl on the dial. On the bezel. You'll notice that the seconds hand has some additional detail. It has the Invicta wing logo on the end. The crystal on this watch is Flame Fusion, which is Invicta's proprietary material, which they describe as a mixture between the qualities of synthetic sapphire as well as mineral crystal. So it supposedly has some of the scratch resistance that you would see with a sapphire as well as some of the impact resistance of mineral crystal. Looking at the bracelet, it's all solid 316L stainless steel. It's actually quite thick. The bracelet links are held together by friction pins. The clasp is Invicta's standard flip lock diver's safety clasp. It's actually a pretty decent quality clasp with the scissor style closure rather than just the flat pressed metal that you find on some cheaper watches. Let's take the bracelet apart and take a look at the movement. Taking a look at the movement on this watch, obviously it has a display case back with the crystal through which you can see the rotor. Invicta is now choosing to paint the rotors on all their automatic watches in bright yellow, which goes along with the kind of the corporate color for Invicta. And I think that's a nice touch. It really helps to pull their line together. Up until now, they've used a variety of different rotors on their watches. Some of them are silver, some of them were black. So now having kind of the yellow color going across all of their automatic watches, I think is a great touch. The movement inside is the NH35A, which is a Seiko movement. It's a 24 joule automatic with a 41-hour power reserve. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour. It is hand windable and also a hacking movement as well. I find it's actually quite a nice movement. The Invicta uses it on a variety of different watches, as well as a lot of boutique dive watch companies have taken to using the NH35 movement as well. So it's become quite a common automatic movement in lower cost watches these days. So let me put the bracelet back together and we'll take a look at this watch on the wrist. So here's the watch on my wrist. My wrist measures 7 3/4 inches in circumference, just for reference. You can see it fits quite well on my wrist. It's actually very comfortable. The bracelet, again, is very nicely done. I like the thickness of the bracelet. The case curvature actually sits quite well across the top of my wrist. And even though it's 18 millimeters in thickness, I don't feel it to be overly bulky. One thing I do want to mention about this watch in terms of the bezel is how nicely the bezel turns. It has a very nice mechanical sound. The movement is extremely smooth. There's no roughness or grinding or even tinniness that you would find on some cheaper divers. It might be because of how thick the bezel is, but again, I find the bezel motion to be extremely nice. There is possibly a small amount of play when you get to a position, but it is pretty secure as far as not reversing. Now, another thing I want to do is compare it to the original Grand Diver. This is the original version. It was also 47 millimeters. You can see some design similarities. The bracelet is pretty much the same with the diver logo on the end link. The overall case shape is pretty much the same as well, but spinning it around to the side, you'll see that the Invicta logo on the new Generation 2 is even larger than the original. Also, the font that they used on the Grand Diver is actually different on the newer version. It's more block lettering versus more kind of a script lettering on the original version. Also, the crown is different. The old crown was more of a coin edge crown, and the new crown has more of a knurled pattern. I kind of like the new crown. Obviously, the biggest difference is going to be in the bezel. The new bezel is much thicker. The old bezel has more of the scalloped, traditional kind of diver's bezel look. Also, the dial is quite different between the two. But other than that, when you look at the clasp and things, those end up being the same. So all in all, as far as a large, technically oversized diver's watch is concerned, I think this new Grand Diver Generation 2 is actually a very nice watch. The bezel motion is fantastic. I like the solid end links, the heavy duty bracelet, the nice screw down crown. The NH35 movement that they use I think is a very nice movement. The dial details, especially the Arabic numerals that they've kind of hidden in the 3, 6, and 9 position, I think are an interesting and a neat little touch. I like the depth of the dial and the height of the hour markers, how they stand off of the dial as well. Alright, so that was a brief review of the Invicta Grand Diver Generation 2 47mm dive watch. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them down below. If you'd like to see a full detailed review with testing as well as detailed photographs, please check them out at watchandtime.com. Also, if you like this review and like to see more reviews in the future, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Alright, thanks for watching.